The docking platforms of Orion's Edge were never quiet. Even in the dying hours of the station's artificial night cycle, the groan of cargo arms, the clang of steel boots, and the occasional burst of venting steam kept the place alive. Dax Blackwell stood at the edge of a gantry, a datapad in his hand, the cool air stinging his face through the open maintenance bay. His latest job, a freighter's burnt-out plasma manifold, was finally done, and for once, he thought he might get a few days without someone shouting for him. That's when the message came. Not on the public net, not through his usual clients, but on a secure channel he hadn't used in years. The sender's name was short and unfamiliar, Krell. The text was simple: urgent contract. Private estate. Discretion required. Compensation, triple standard rate. Coordinates attached. Triple rate was hard to ignore. But it wasn't just the money, there was weight behind that name. Krell wasn't a shipping captain or scrap dealer. Krell was old wealth. Aristocracy. A man who collected more than credits. 3 hours later, Dax's battered ship, the Wren, was cutting through the dark toward a remote asteroid in the Selvos belt. A single structure clung to its surface like a spider on a rock, its architecture all sharp curves and silver gleam, visible even in the asteroid's deep shadow. Baron Krell's private estate. The landing pad was polished obsidian. A pair of guards in black composite armor stood at attention, their visors reflecting Dax's approach. No words were exchanged as they scanned him and waved him inside. The interior was wrong. Too perfect. The corridors were a muted gold, illuminated by panels that imitated the soft glow of old Terran sunset. Alcoves lined the halls, each holding an artifact, frozen alien fauna, rare minerals sculpted into impossible shapes, ancient weapons behind invisible barriers. Dax slowed as his eyes wandered over each display, but a tall, pale man in a deep crimson coat cleared his throat behind him. Baron Krell is waiting. The guide led him into a vast chamber where the air smelled faintly of cedar and something sweeter, perfumed, almost cloying. At the far end stood Krell, hands folded behind his back, gazing into what Dax first took to be a glass column filled with liquid light. "Mr. Blackwell," Krell said, his voice rich, each syllable carefully placed. "I trust your trip was smooth." Dax nodded. "Your message said you had an urgent engineering issue." "Indeed." Krell gestured toward the column. "But perhaps you should see the nature of the problem before we discuss the solution." The column's surface shimmered, and as Dax stepped closer, his breath caught. Inside was a face, delicate, luminous, and utterly alien. Her skin was like carved quartz lit from within, shifting faintly with hues of blue and violet. Eyes deep as nebulae watched him, alive, aware, and unblinking. The rest of her was nothing. No body. Only a faint, crystalline mist spiraled downward into the base of the column, as though the rest of her had been erased from existence. Dax felt his voice catch in his throat. "She's alive? Conscious," Krell said, almost lazily. "Preserved in a stasis lattice. An exceedingly rare state. She cannot die, nor can she move. Her people's form is delicate crystalline structures, telepathic cores, and without a proper vessel, she is but a mind adrift." Dax tore his eyes from her to look at Krell. "Why? Why keep her like this?" Krell's smile was faint. "Because she is valuable. Royalty, in fact. Leora Vera, princess of the Zathari. She is the last of her line, and as such, worth more than any fleet of ships. I keep her as a conversation piece, one might say." Something in Dax's chest twisted. Leora's gaze had not left him. He felt a faint tremor in his mind, like a distant voice trying to break through static. "Help me." The words were not spoken aloud. They bloomed inside his head, urgent, raw. Dax stiffened, glancing at Krell, but the Baron's expression hadn't changed. "He will sell me," the voice continued, ragged at the edges. "Or destroy me, if the bidding fails. Please." Dax swallowed hard, stepping back. "And what exactly do you need from me?" "The lattice is unstable," Krell said. "I require a new containment vessel, one that will keep her alive indefinitely, portable enough to display." "And no," Dax said. The word was out before he could stop himself. Krell's eyes narrowed. "Excuse me? I'm not building a prison for her." The silence stretched. Then Krell smiled again, a sharper thing this time. "Then you will decline the contract?" Dax's jaw tightened. "Yes." Krell gave a small, dismissive shrug. As you wish. My guards will escort you out. The walk back to the Wren was a blur. That voice still echoed in his head, faint but persistent. He told himself to forget it, to fly away and take another job. But when he powered up the ship, he didn't set a course back to Orion's edge. He sat in the pilot's chair, staring at the empty space ahead, hearing again the quiet desperation of her voice. 2 hours later, the Wren slipped into a decaying orbit around a derelict comms station 5 clicks from Krell's asteroid. Dax spent the next day mapping the estate's security from a distance, noting the drone patrols, the shift changes, the blind spots. That night, he went back. The Wren floated in silence, its systems on minimum draw, camouflaged against the deep black. Dax sat hunched over the NAV console, watching the estate through a narrowband scope. Krell's asteroid rotated slowly, its silver spires gleaming faintly in reflected starlight. Security drones flitted along its surface like mechanical hornets, their scanning beams slicing the dark. He ran through the plan again. The west maintenance hatch was his way in, a narrow, unpressurized access point used by estate staff for offloading supplies. It connected directly to the lower vault levels, where Krell kept his most valuable pieces. Leora would be there. She had to be. He checked the time, then grabbed his toolkit, a small plasma cutter, and a pulse jammer. The jammer was old, one of his father's designs, but it could still fry a drone's optics for 15 seconds. Sometimes that was all a man needed. Slipping into the maintenance corridor felt like stepping into another world. The silence was oppressive, the only sound the faint hiss of his suit's rebreather. He moved carefully, each magnetic step clicking against the metal floor, keeping to the shadows. Twice, drones passed within arm's reach, their scanning eyes sweeping over the walls, missing him by inches. When he reached the vault door, his heart was pounding hard enough to feel in his fingertips. The panel was protected by a triple lock, biometric, encrypted, and physical. Dax set to work. His cutter hissed as it sliced through the outer casing. Beneath, wires glittered like veins in the low light. He bypassed the encryption first, then faked a palm print with his suit's microprojector. The lock clicked open with a mechanical sigh. The vault's air was cool and smelled faintly of ozone. Light panels in the floor cast everything in a faint, ghostly glow. Rows of display cases stretched out in every direction, each holding something rare, strange, or both a petrified insect the size of a man's torso, a glass sphere that swirled with its own private storm, the desiccated hand of some reptilian creature frozen mid-claw. She was in the center. The stasis column pulsed faintly, a slow, rhythmic glow. Leora's eyes found him instantly. He could feel her mind press against his like a warm hand through a sheet of ice. You came back. Dax stepped up to the column, pulling the control module from his belt. I'm getting you out of here. The lattice will resist, she warned. It's bound to this chamber's anchors. If you break it too fast, it will shatter, and me with it. Then we'll do it slow, he said. He knelt, opening a side panel at the base of the column. The tech was more advanced than anything he'd handled in years. Layered crystalline processors, energy stabilizers feeding directly into the lattice core. Whoever built it had ignored every ethical boundary in the book. He worked carefully, rerouting power one strand at a time. The glow around her flickered, then stabilized. Hurry, her voice urged. They will notice. I'm already hurrying, Dax muttered. Footsteps echoed from somewhere beyond the vault. Too close. He bit down on the urge to rush and disengage the final anchor. The column's light dimmed until only the faintest shimmer remained. Okay, he said, lifting the portable containment unit from his pack, a cylinder just large enough to hold the lattice's energy field. Ready? Yes. He triggered the transfer. Light spilled into the cylinder like water being poured into glass. Leora's image faded from the column, then solidified inside the portable unit. The moment it locked, alarms screamed through the vault. Dax slung the cylinder across his back and bolted. Guards were already flooding into the outer corridor, weapons drawn. He hit the pulse jammer, sending a wave of static through their visors. They staggered, blind, as he barreled past. A drone swooped in from the ceiling, spitting plasma rounds. He ducked into a side corridor, the heat from the shots searing past his cheek. His cutter was already in his hand, slicing through a sealed door. The maintenance hatch was ahead. He dove through, cycling the lock behind him, and launched into the cold vacuum. The Wren loomed in the dark, her hull lights dimmed. He kicked hard, each push sending him spinning toward her airlock. Inside, he slammed the controls. The hatch sealed, and the ship's systems roared to life. Engines flared, and the Wren tore free from the asteroid's shadow. But Krell's pursuit was immediate. His private corvette appeared on the scope, sleek and predatory, closing the gap fast. Dax, Leora's voice came from the unit, steadier now. You cannot outrun him in open space. I'm not planning to. He yanked the Wren into a dive toward the dense field of rock and debris surrounding the asteroid. Hold on. They weaved through the belt, shards of stone spinning past in a deadly ballet. Krell's ship followed, but larger and less agile, scraping hull plating against passing rocks. When a narrow crevice appeared between two massive slabs of asteroid, Dax threaded the Wren through. The corvette tried, and failed. A grinding crash echoed through the comms as Krell's ship clipped the rock, spinning out. Dax didn't wait to see the damage. He pushed deeper into the belt, then cut the engines, letting the ship drift among the stones. Only when the scope showed no sign of pursuit did he finally breathe. You still alive in there? He asked. Thanks to you. Her voice was softer now, tinged with something he couldn't name. But I cannot remain like this. The lattice will decay within days without a proper vessel. I know, he said. I've got an idea. They hid in the skeletal remains of a derelict station orbiting a dead moon. The place had once been a refueling hub, but the war had gutted it decades ago. Now its corridors were empty except for drifting dust and the occasional flicker of long-dead signs. The Wren was anchored to the outer ring, its engines silent, its systems running just enough to keep them alive. Dax cleared the central table in his workshop, scattering old plasma couplings and worn tools onto the floor. The portable containment cylinder went in the middle. Leora's presence pulsed faintly inside, the light within her form dim but steady. This isn't going to be quick, he warned. I've never built a vessel for a consciousness lattice before. I'll have to improvise. You are a builder. Her voice came, warm and certain. You will find a way. He opened a crate and began pulling out parts. An alloy exoskeletal frame he'd scavenged from an old mining drone, servo actuators from a disassembled cargo lifter, and a set of biosynthetic muscle fibers he'd been saving for a repair job that now would never happen. The nervous system would be the hardest, integrating a crystalline consciousness into a humanoid shell without tearing it apart from within. Tell me more about your kind, he said, laying out the components. If I understand your biology, or whatever counts as biology for you, it'll be easier. We are the Zathri. Our forms are latticework crystal-grown in the deep chambers of our homeworld. Light and sound shape us. When we are young, our cores sing with our families, our bodies vibrating in harmony. Her voice faltered. We could shape the air and the stone with song. Her memories bled into him. Towering crystal spires rising over glowing rivers, air filled with shimmering tones like a chorus of glass bells. He could feel her joy there, her belonging. Then came the war, she continued. An attack from those who saw us as nothing but jewels to be mined. My family was destroyed in the first strike. My body was shattered, my core taken. Krell bought me from my captors. I have been in that prison ever since. Dax's hands tightened on a wrench until the metal creaked. Then we make sure he never puts you back in one. The next hours blurred into labor. He built the frame first, light but strong, shaped vaguely like a human's for ease of movement and maintenance. The servos went in next, then the artificial muscles, threading them along limbs and spine. All the while, he talked to her, asked about her favorite songs, the way her people told stories, the feel of their homeworld's light. She answered with details that painted pictures in his mind until it felt like he'd been there himself. The neural interface was the hardest part. He took a crystalline processor core from an illegal AI module he'd salvaged years ago, then reshaped it, embedding threads of conductive crystal designed to resonate with the frequencies she emitted. When it was ready, he installed it in the chest cavity of the frame. This will be the bridge, he explained. You'll project your consciousness into it, and from there, control the body. And if it fails, then we try again, he said, forcing confidence into his tone. He didn't tell her that if it failed badly enough, it could scatter her mind into static. Finally, he connected the containment cylinder to the interface via a narrow umbilical. The light inside her prison pulsed brighter. I am ready. He triggered the transfer. Energy rippled down the cable, the workshop's lights flickering as systems strained to compensate. The body on the table twitched once, then stilled. Leora's image inside the cylinder faded until only a faint shimmer remained. Dax's heart pounded. He leaned over the frame, watching for any sign of life. Then the fingers flexed. The head turned, slow and unsteady, the crystalline lenses of the processor core glowing faintly behind the mask-like faceplate. The voice that came through the small speakers was soft, tentative. "I can feel," she said. "The air, the weight." "Try moving," he urged. She pushed herself upright, the movements jerky at first, like a child learning to walk. Her hand brushed the edge of the table, and she froze, the synthetic fingers curling around the steel as if to memorize the sensation. "This is overwhelming," she whispered. "So much at once." "You'll get used to it," he said. "One step at a time." The first steps were awkward, the servos whining softly with each movement. But with every moment, her control improved. She turned to him, the glow in her lenses shifting to a warmer hue. "Dax," she said, and for the first time, it wasn't just a voice in his head. It was sound, carried through the air. "Thank you." He didn't know what to say, so he just nodded and tried not to let her see the lump in his throat. They didn't have long to enjoy the moment. The station's passive sensors picked up an incoming ship, large, fast, and on a direct vector toward them. "Krell," Dax muttered, moving to the console. "He must have traced us." "Then we end this," Leora said, and there was steel in her tone now. Krell's corvette dropped from FDL like a shark breaking the surface. His voice crackled over the comms, cold and sharp. "Blackwell, you have something of mine. Surrender her, and I might let you live." "Not a chance," Dax said, cutting the channel. They couldn't outrun him in open space, not this time. But the station had one advantage, its old defense grid. Most of it was offline, but with a few manual overrides, Dax could route enough power to the pulse cannons to make them dangerous again. Leora moved beside him, her new body fluid now, her hands flying over the auxiliary controls. "I can disrupt his targeting systems," she said. "His mind is noisy. I can make it worse." The battle was quick and brutal. As Krell's ship closed, the station's cannons roared to life, hammering his shields. Leora's telepathic interference made his pilots misjudge their maneuvers, sending the corvette lurching in the wrong direction at critical moments. When a final cannon burst punched through his engines, the corvette spun away, venting fire and smoke. Dax watched the wreck retreat into the void. "He'll be back. Then we'll be ready," Leora said. She stepped closer, her gaze steady. "I will rebuild my people's home. If you come with me, I will not forget what you've done." Dax looked at her, the strange, impossible being who had started as a voice in his head and now stood here, alive because he'd refused to walk away. "Yeah," he said. "I'm in." They boarded the Wren, the dead station falling away behind them. The stars stretched ahead, endless and waiting, and for the first time in a long while, Dax felt like he was flying towards something instead of away.